Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jazlibeth if you're new here. I'm the host of Museful, but today I'm going to be talking about graduation blues. Roll the intro. So as many of you know, almost a year ago, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in visual arts management, and I have a minor in digital media. So since then, a lot of things have happened, and it's about that time where graduation is upon us for most of us. Some people graduate at different times of the year, but for the majority, especially if you're on a special track, most people are graduating in the spring semester. And since we're nearing the end of April, graduation usually takes place in the first few weeks of May, depending on what school you go to. And I recently had a conversation with one of my fellow co-workers at the museum that I work for. Her name is Maddi. She's an incredible videographer, and she's graduating soon. And we had such an interesting conversation about the fear behind graduating and needing to know things, but at the same time not knowing anything or not having much life experience when you graduate. And I wanted to kind of discuss this topic of graduation blues, where graduation's supposed to be such an exciting time in your life, where it's usually one of the first few times that it's happened, and graduating college is a really, really big deal. But at the same time, you have a lot of stress on you to pass your exams to make sure that you can qualify for graduation, but also like what comes next? Do you have jobs lined up? Do you have the work experience that you need to land those jobs? Do you even have time for applying to those jobs? Because all of these things are happening at the same time. It can get very stressful and overwhelming very quickly, and it makes graduation this very daunting thing happening in your life, which is why I wanted to kind of talk about it as somebody who has graduated, and what does life look like after you graduate. I feel like there is this expectation that when you graduate, you kind of already need to know where you're going, or you need to already have a few jobs lined up. And I even had a friend when I was graduating last year kind of come to me with this expectation, like, do you have jobs lined up? Have you been applying? Like, you should definitely have something ready to go. So the thing with being an art major is that those kinds of jobs really ebb and flow. Whether there aren't certain hiring seasons, it's all very situational. When one person moves up, it creates an opening for you, and then you want to try and fill that spot. But most of the time, traditional artistic institutions are only hiring from internal, or at least those are the people that they prioritize in their hiring process. Not to speak for any and all institutions, it's just what I've noticed, especially in my community of art institutions. And in earlier episodes of Museful, I have spoken about networking and how important it is to network, and how daunting the word itself is. Because when I was speaking to Maddie about, networking and graduation in general and how panicked she was, I was trying to explain to her that the friends that you make in school, the teachers that you have, and anyone that you really meet or work with becomes a part of your network. Your friends are your network. It's kind of like your friends and your acquaintances become a part of your network. And later on, they have different art degrees, different strengths that you guys can work together and create something beautiful from. And before you know it, the people that you meet, the people that you work with and have a positive relationship become very vital later down the line for your career, for any kind of projects that you may need a team of people. And not in all cases, but most of the time, people are going to be looking for individuals that they already know, or people that already have an impressive resume or portfolio. And that might be why when you graduate, there isn't 4 or 5 jobs looking to hire you immediately. When it comes to college, in a traditional sense, people are going for lawyer positions or medicine, anything health related positions. And those fields are always hiring. And of course, we need people in those positions because they're always hiring, and we always need people who can do the more traditional jobs in life. But at the same time, the art world isn't necessarily always hiring. You kind of have to break into it. And although I want to tackle that kind of gatekeeping nature that the art industry has, I understand why it can be very difficult to land a job as soon as you graduate. And I'm sorry I'm focusing on this so much right now, and it's because when you're in, graduation mode, you're in your last semester, your family, your friends, everyone that you know is asking you, like, what's your plan after? What are you doing after? And most of the time, you're like, I don't know. You could be moving back home, but then from that point on, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my career. And as I've mentioned in other Museful episodes as well, a lot of positions don't pay. And most people need to make a living and put food on their table and provide for themselves, especially by the time you're in your mid-20s or whenever you're graduating. You're at this point in adulthood where you have your degree. Now it's like, what's next in my life? What's next in my career? And you have to start thinking about making bigger decisions, even bigger than going to college. You've finished that, you've completed it, you're at the brink of it, and now there's this daunting cliff that you have to get over that's gonna lead you into the next phase of your life, and you don't even know what it is. A lot of people don't even know what job they're going to land. A lot of artists don't know if their next call for art is going to land them in a gallery or something. A lot of people we just don't know. And this is a PSA to all of the parents and extended family members who are asking repeatedly, what's your plan, to their soon-to-be graduate child or relative. We don't know yet, especially when it comes to art. Not because there's no jobs in it, but because they're harder to find. Of course, doctors are always hiring. Everyone's looking for a lawyer, everyone's looking for a nurse, but not every institution, maybe in your community, is looking for a marketing manager right now. Not every museum has an opening for new art to be put in the gallery, especially because galleries work a year ahead. So these things take a lot of time. So for me personally, when I graduated, I knew, okay, I need to start looking at new positions. I have the degree, what's next? And so when I first started the first round of really sending my resume out, I wasn't getting anything back because I really didn't have much experience in my field. So I figured the next thing I could do was just do another internship and see where it takes me, because then at least I'm just getting more experience. And that was when I started interning at the museum that I'm currently at. And during my internship was when they had a position open, and I took the chance and I was encouraged to apply for it because I already had a relationship, a rapport with this company. So by the time my internship finished, I had a job with them already. So technically I was promoted, and that looks even better on your resume. Sometimes you need to delay getting the job so that you can have the experience behind you to back it. Or if you're going to be a creative professional, like a professional artist, sometimes you need a lengthier or more developed portfolio. You need to work on your passion projects. You need to come out with a line or a series of paintings, of work that shows like, hey, I may have gotten the degree and done the coursework and blah, 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 but I also have like actual things that back it up. I also have like all of this experience, all of this proof kind of, that I am capable to fulfill said job, whatever it could be. So in my personal experience, I didn't get the promotion it wasn't until 6 months after I graduated that I landed a position, but I had already started interning at that institution and an opportunity just happened to open up. Now, hypothetically speaking, if the position never opened up and I concluded my internship there, my plan would be to do another internship. I think I was already aiming to just get a paid position so that I could both provide for myself and get work experience in my degree, in my field, and pivot. That way it would give me experience that would give me access to more jobs that pay more. The more work experience you have, the more upward you can climb in the industry, technically. The point being that when you graduate, your career goals are going to come to fruition as long as you are making decisions in your career or in your daily life that will further push you to that goal. I took the internship, even though it was unpaid, to push me to have more experience that would take me even closer to my dream job. Even though these things don't happen in a timely manner, people want these things now, our attention spans are shorter than ever, and people want things to happen very quickly. But the fact of the matter is, it's just not going to happen that way. Life cannot happen as chronological as you plan it. Your plans will never be exactly how you planned it. And if they do happen that way, certain things are going to be sacrificed during that process. So letting things happen naturally is the best way you can go through it. If you're unsure of what you're doing, just try to take positions and to gain more experience. That's really the important part, is getting out there and experiencing life, whatever it throws at you, because you never know where it's going to take you. When you're doing these things, like when you're taking positions, as long as you truly believe that they're taking you closer to your goals, that's all that really matters. I think people don't realize how stressful it can be to have certain things happening at the same time. When you're graduating high school or college, you kind of in this transition phase, usually when people are going through transition phases in their lives, especially as adults already, it's over a length of time. Whereas when you're in a school structure, things have deadlines. You need to have all of your assignments done by this day. They have to be up to this certain standard of quality for you to pass. And then when you have that certain grade of passing, then you are awarded your degree, and then you go through graduation, and there are several steps to get us to an end goal. But people don't realize that what's going on mentally is a lot slower to accepting your reality than what's happening in real life. So what I mean by that is, there may be a deadline on the 12th that I need to get this assignment in to get a good grade in order to pass. But mentally, I'm like, okay, if I don't do well on this, or if my professor doesn't like what I turn in and they give me a bad grade, then this can happen. Then I'm not gonna pass the class. Then I'm not gonna graduate. Then my family's gonna be disappointed in me. And then, that's just an example of things that you can worry about, but it gets very slippery very quickly. And when you're dealing with this all at the same time, it's extremely stressful. You're holding a lot of things mentally. And when people are asking you, hey, what's your plan after graduation? Your brain's thinking, I don't even know. I'm too busy worrying about if I'm gonna pass my exam this Friday, because it may be the determining factor of if I even make it to graduation. And then at the same time, you're hoping that nothing can stop you from graduating. And all this pressure is placed on graduating that you're even worried about getting there. That's the thing, is you're too busy worried about getting to that destination because it's such a pivotal moment in your life and you don't want to screw it up, especially when a lot of attention starts being focused on you because you're trying to just get to that goal. I need to have this degree so that I can have access to better paying jobs and to start theoretically my career. And what graduation then becomes is this symbolic transition, this symbolic traditional accomplishment that represents becoming an adult for some people, or finally starting your career professionally. And for some jobs, that really is the determining factor of when you can start your career. You need to have this degree to get this job. But the problem with art degrees specifically is that the industry doesn't really care if you have a degree. There are plenty of people in the world who don't have degrees for traditional jobs. They have a lot of experience. And when it comes to art, it's such a visual representation of your skill and your mental state and your mental thoughts and your emotions that it's hard to measure how qualified you are for a position if you don't have a visual representation of your skill. Yeah, that's so true. And you know what? That's so true because Your resume in a traditional job would technically be your visual representation of your skill. Your portfolio is a visual representation of your skill. And a lot of the time, school doesn't give you assignments or skills that are going to apply to real life. Most of the time, you need to get hands-on with whatever you want your career to be. I think for art specifically, it is very difficult to measure how skilled you are at a job unless you have proof of it. If you have developed your skills from the start of school to the end of school, you have this degree, but it doesn't necessarily represent your skills. You just have a degree. You can have the degree, but not have any of the skills behind it. And I think that's why it's so important to give yourself time, give yourself grace to live life a little bit. So that way you can finally figure out like, hey, I'm kind of liking this field, I should do more of that. I should get good at that. And then, oh, let me find other people who enjoy this thing. And next thing you know, maybe that's your career. You're teaching that thing, or you're making that professionally. Graduation blues is such a normal thing that happens to most students. A lot of students are panicking. They are going through it right now because right now they just want to pass. That's all they want to do. They want to see a passing grade, and sometimes that's a C. Sometimes it's the difference between a 79 and an 80. If you're counting like the rest of the grades for that semester, what if you're having a hard time that semester and one assignment is dragging you down? Like, things in school get so nitpicky like that. Like, all of these different links and steps to get to graduation, all of these different assignments really can make or break your ending grade, or will determine whether or not you pass or fail. If you had a horrible week, you're not getting any sleep back in February, we'll use spring semester as an example. If you had a horrible week in February where you just couldn't sleep well, you had a lot of personal issues going on, and you didn't perform well enough on a test, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm just gonna do my best for the rest of the semester, and you get some decent grades for the rest of the semester, but that one week that you didn't feel well, that grade was not that good, and let's say you got a D or an F, it can drag down your grades so much that it really is the make or break factor between you passing or failing that class. And it's a very stressful thing to be in school. I don't think people realize that the real world isn't built like that. Like, me having a bad week this week doesn't, one, define me, and two, usually will not detrimentally affect you later on. If anything, you can do a quick fix, address whatever lackluster work you may have put out, and then you move on, you move forward. But in school, every assignment that you turn in, every hour of the day that you don't spend studying, every minute that you're not sleeping can really determine whether or not you pass the class, whether or not you meet the requirement for your degree, which can ultimately determine whether or not you graduate, which is such a big deal. And I think that's why students get very, very stressed out over graduation time, and we're not realizing it. A lot of students get very excited around this time because it's the end of a chapter, it's the end of those sleepless nights, it's the end of all of that stress for at least a certain amount of time from school specifically, and they can finally move on. But please don't underestimate the students who are going through it, or the students who may or may not pass that class and need to extend their graduation date, because every minute that you spend of your day contributes to your graduation. Graduation is just it's a really tough time of the year. So when somebody that you know graduates, like, really congratulate them. Congratulate the fact that they have gone through so much and have finally made it to the end, and have finally moved on, got that degree, and are able to begin their career, begin their life professionally. And don't be so hard on them when it comes to what are you doing next, because sometimes we're just trying to get through the next day or the next week, let alone, months or years. When I was having this conversation about graduation with Maddie, something that she said really got me, which was comparing yourself to other people. Now, this is a very real thing in everyone's life. Probably at one point or another, you see someone, you see something that they have, some kind of quality about them, and you can't help but then compare yourself to them and say, man, I pale in comparison to this person because of XYZ, because they have this, because they do this. And usually that comparison lies within some kind of goal that you have that you haven't reached yet. Now, she was telling me, especially when it comes to art specifically, that there are a bunch of her friends or people in her network, as I mentioned before, that have more of a lengthy portfolio than her, or because she's a videographer, have more short films that they have created or written more scripts or anything that has to do with their career. And she looks at her own portfolio and thinks, maybe my work isn't as developed yet, and maybe I'm just not as good as they are. I look at her and I see myself, and I see so many of my friends and so many people that I know who struggle with this. And I remember feeling that way so many times for so many different reasons. When it comes to graduation, a lot of people are at different times in their life. When it comes to any person that you're looking at, you are on different paths, you're on different timelines, and I can't form into words how big of an issue this is in our society right now. But let me kind of zero in on specifically school and art students specifically. So back in 2023 spring semester, I signed up to take an intermediate painting class, and it was to fulfill a portion of my degree, and I also just really wanted to take painting. And I began the first week or two of class, and I would see other students, because when you're in a painting class, you're all standing because they make you stand, with a bunch of easels. You're all standing in a circle and you're working on this thing as the teacher explains whatever your objective is, right? So when you're standing in the circle, you can see people's work ahead of you, and you can see people working across the room, or if you want to, depending on how the class structure is, you can stop and walk around, take a break as you need to, go to the bathroom, and you can see other people's work in that class. And I had gotten so in my head about my abilities as an artist, my abilities as a painter, because I consider myself to be a painter, and I like my own work, even though I don't do enough of it nowadays. But I couldn't help but compare myself to the other people in my class who, let's say we had a color mixing assignment, they did it so effortlessly than I could, or their application was more smoother than what I was able to do. Because that's the thing about school, and with art specifically, they don't teach you the basic principles of how to do XYZ with painting, XYZ with drawing. They just assume that you already have a base knowledge of how to do that, and then you execute it and put your skills to the test and develop them from your very beginner to hopefully a professional level. But school doesn't teach you how do you apply acrylic paint on canvas. They don't break down, and let me know if that's something you would like to see in the Museful series, where I kind of break down the most basic things, because common knowledge isn't all that common, okay? Not everyone knows how to transfer a drawing to a painting, or transfer a drawing to an even bigger drawing. Even things like that seem really basic or beginner to most professionals in the art industry, they might not have ever been taught point blank, as you would think, right? And all that to say is I got so in my head about my skills and my abilities and my knowledge that I ended up dropping the class. And I like to consider myself a very good student, And I never liked to drop classes, especially because I felt like it was just pushing my graduation date backwards, and I didn't want that to happen. But this class, I felt so insecure and so scared that I dropped the class. And it was all because I was comparing myself to other people. And by fall, I kind of sat with that and I thought about it, and I was like, you know, they may have had, like the other students in my class may have had different levels of skills than I do, but we were all in the same class. We were all there to learn something. And although you might be better at one thing and I'd be better at another thing, we're kind of both on the same, we're in the same class at the same time. We happen to be here together. Despite your skills differing from mine, we're both here. And I felt like I really learned from myself in that realization. I learned so much about comparison, which is that we're all on so many different paths. We have so much going on in our lives at the same time. Every human, there's 8 billion people in the world. We all have these strengths, these weaknesses, these insecurities, and we can't help but compare ourselves to other people. But when it comes to school specifically, like I said, we're all graduating. We're all starting our career, or I should say, we're all reaching this accomplishment together, despite the fact that your skills might be different than mine. And I don't like to say the word better, because better is objective, you know. What is better to you can be worse to me and vice versa. And so either way, whether you have more developed skills than I do, or I feel like I have better skills than you do, we're both getting a degree today. And it really is like comparing yourself to other people really is the thief of joy. You don't get to like be proud of yourself in that moment because you're too busy feeling like you're not good enough. When at the end of the day, that person probably feels the same way about somebody else and feels like they're not good enough. And so the cycle will continue. We all compare ourselves to people. And I think the more important thing is to focus on where you are in life and give yourself some grace and be proud of yourself for graduating, for reaching this accomplishment. Despite everything that you went through, the hard days, the good days, you made it to this day. And it's all about you. Like, it literally is. It doesn't matter what this person did or how good their painting is or how good that is for them. It's all about what path you're on because you're living your life. Obviously, you can be inspired by other people. And I think that's how we need to look at things, is that instead of comparing ourselves to other people, you can instead be inspired by them. I think that will allow you to kind of look at other people's accomplishments, and instead of thinking low of yourself, you use it as fuel. You use it as a way to get better and better develop your skills. Like, man, I wish I could do that. I want to do something like that. And instead of saying like, man, I'll never be as good as them, you can tell yourself, I want to be as good as them. I'm gonna be as good as them. And it's so different. The wording, the slight change in how you word those things in your brain completely flips the narrative and gives you a different feeling. Saying, man, I'll never be as good as them is so sad in of itself. But listen to the hope in the words, I'm gonna get as good as them. I'm gonna be there one day. I wanna be as good as them. There is hope, there is optimism, that's an aspiration, that's a goal. And as long as you take the steps to getting to that goal, you will always get there. You will get there. And being proud of what you've made up to this point is so important, because there can be someone who has less developed skills as maybe you, and they're looking at your work and they're like, man, I want to be as good as them. And you look at them and you're like, you're so good. Like that I'm sure everyone has somebody like that in their life that, man, I want to be as good as that person. And they look at you and they're like, you're already good. You're just going to get even better. And I remember my aunt used to say that to me like you are already good, and what you're striving for is better. And I think that's so important. That's so important that we all have our strengths. We are all capable of doing things. It just takes the effort and the determination to go and do that thing, to go and fulfill that dream, and not letting it just sit in your head that you'll never be at that level, so I'm not even gonna try. Why try? Instead of framing it like that in your brain, instead saying like, I'm gonna get to that point. I'm gonna develop my skills enough to be there. I think that's what matters. That was like a big thing that Maddie said was, man, I feel like I can never get to that point. And I told her, I was like, you will. The more you work on your art and the more you collaborate with people, the more developed your skills will be, and you will get to that point where you feel more capable, and you're gonna keep getting better and better and better. All right, so before this video gets super, super long, let's start to wrap up all of this surrounding graduation blues is what I'm gonna call this episode of Museful. Which is, I guess, what are the next steps? Like, what am I supposed to do? I understand that I'm supposed to, like, if you're listening to this video and you're about to graduate, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, okay, I get it, uplift myself, think positively, I'm just trying to pass. What should I do after if I can't find a job immediately after and I don't know what to tell people? Here's what I'll say. Everyone's on a different path from other people, and we're all on our own journeys, and we're all going through life on our own pace. And sometimes your pace is gonna match with somebody else's, and then one of you is gonna go faster than the other. And I think you'll never have like an aha moment. Like, it just will never happen. Your mindset from the day that you set the goal and the day that your dream hopefully comes to fruition, you're not gonna be like, oh my gosh, aha, that was the goal that I set, or I knew that this would happen in this amount of time, or like, there's never gonna be a moment where it's like, aha, there it is. That's the thing. Although there will never be an aha moment for you, I hope that later down the line, like, you have enough personal self-reflection to realize, like, I actually did that thing. Like, I actually made it this far. And look how awesome I am. Or look at how much I've done. I think that's the aha moment that I want, and that I hope that you would want. You just have to realize that things are a lot more complicated than that, and sometimes things take time. And so giving yourself like a mental break after you graduate of like, I did this. I made it this far. I'm proud of myself. And I am so ready to like reevaluate my goals, get some life experience before you go to your master's degree maybe, and figure out like, all right, what now? And just like realizing that, okay, this is the next step. And I think what's the most important thing is just learning to trust yourself and realizing that I'm on the path that I put for myself, and if I want to meet this goal, I will meet it as long as I'm taking the steps to get there, and just reevaluating like, okay, where am I in life right now? What have I done? What have I accomplished? What do I want next? And planning out exactly like, what are you gonna do to just get there? Or getting this big goal. Like, and this was a thing in my capstone class, which is goals are more attainable when you really break them down. In my case, I want to be a museum director. Okay, how do you do that? All right, let's break down, like, what do I need to have on my degree at least, or what kind of work experience do I need to have? Okay, so I need to have this kind of work experience. What kind of jobs do I need to take to get there? And what kind of experience do I need to have before I can get that job that's gonna lead me to that end goal of becoming a director? Things like that, like really breaking it down on how I'm gonna do it, and then doing it is what's really gonna push you forward. And you can spend all this time planning, but it'll never, like, that's the thing, is like there's this border between planning and doing. And so making sure like you are planning goals, not so like minuscule, like every day I'm gonna read for an hour, or every day I'm going to submit a resume, or like something that's like realistic to you. Like, okay, this week I'm gonna try to send out at least 3 job offers, or I'm gonna paint at least 3 paintings, or something like that. Like I said, there's a border between attainable goals that you can fulfill and reach, and then there's the difference between getting so into that planning stage that you never actually move forward. So sit back, you know, once you have like a brief idea of like the top 3 steps that you need to take to reach your goal, then you start doing it. Like, just start going into it. Don't be scared of failing, because you'll never know unless you actually try. There's a saying out there that not taking action is what's gonna fail you. When you take action, even if you don't do well in whatever it is that you're trying to do, at least you figured out, like, hey, I didn't do well at that. But if you never tried, how would you know that you're not good at it? Or how would you know that you are good at it? So let's wrap up this video before I really get into this. But like, if you want to hear more, let me know. Just taking a step back after graduation, or maybe just before it, like looking at yourself and realizing this is how far I've gotten, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing, and figuring out like, okay, maybe that's not accomplishable right now, but I'm gonna take the steps to get me closer there, and figuring out what are those steps, and just reevaluating your mindset, reevaluating your goals, and also taking a second to breathe. Enjoy this moment. Congratulations on graduating if you are. You deserve it. You worked really hard. In case nobody said that to you, you did. You worked really hard. And school is really tough, and you did it. And now it's time to like take a breath and move on. And that's a very beautiful thing. Let's not get all emotional stuff. Let's wrap this video up. Thank you so much for listening or watching to this episode of Museful. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in next month's video. Bye!